The Process, a podcast about creativity and experimental music. In the world of experimental music, outcomes and accolades for creators can be uncertain and at times seem far and few between. Therefore, creators and practitioners of experimental music must embrace the one thing they will always have complete control over: the process. This podcast aims to understand this creative process by listening to new works and discussing them with their creators. Each episode focuses on one creator and their music. Understanding how and why they create can inform aspiring creatives and help audiences better understand and navigate experimental music. I'm Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, and I'll be your host as we explore the world of experimental music, creativity, and the human need to find purpose in their world and lives. This is The Process.
I'm a pretty lo-fi person in general, kind of a minimalist, I would say, just aesthetically in general.
Yeah.
And so I'm not super into like hi-fi or like gear. I have a Zoom recorder that I've had for, I don't know, 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I have a camera, maybe a Panasonic camera that can shoot 4K, but it's pretty low. In the scheme of like how fancy a camera can get, that I bought on, Facebook Marketplace or something.
Right.
And my phone. I use my phone a lot actually too.
Yeah.
So I typically just use those three things, and I try to have them available all the time. And I try to like almost over record, even if something is barely interesting or barely present, but just get in the habit of like constantly gathering material, because it's crazy how much material you have to gather to find one thing that might work or might create the whole piece that you're trying to work on.
Yeah, I found with photography, I'm just a bad photographer, but I take 70 photos and three of them are usable or the right shot. Yeah.
Totally.
So it's about collecting a lot. But that's interesting. A lot of people go to a place and they go there to visit or, experience the different perspective, like you said. But it's interesting, and I agree with this. Well, there's this like sort of need to document, right? Or to kind of collect the sound. And is it specifically just so that you're going to use it in a future piece, or is it just the nature of kind of like taking an inventory of an experience? Do you think it's both, or did it begin
Probably
one
to
place?
use,
Yeah, to
probably
use.
I know that it will be used in a future piece, and
Yeah.
particularly if it's a sound that I haven't heard before,
Mm,
or if it's a sound that's maybe I have heard before that I haven't heard in a while, or
yeah.
just to something unique, or then I probably know at some point maybe it will be used. I don't, yeah, I don't really think of it almost as like documentation. I do think of it as like creative process, and
Yeah.
um, like I almost never go back and listen to the things just to sort of like experience them again, unless
Right.
I know it's part of a broader kind of like
Yeah.
artistic aesthetic thing that I'm trying to like come up with. But I definitely have a lot of folders of
Sure.
recordings.
Yeah. 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 But like you said, it might be a train, it might be a bird or something that you haven't heard before, and you kind of remember, and you're like, oh, let me go back and find the bird from that trip last October or something. Yeah.
And I think when you turn on your microphone too, you kind of like shut up and listen.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's also really useful. It's kind of like when when you show your music to somebody else, you almost
Yeah.
don't need them to say anything. It's just you just having another person in the room allows you to
Yeah.
hear it in a different way, like
Right.
almost like more empathetically or through somebody else's
Yeah.
ears. And I feel that way when I'm videoing or audio recording something or field recording.
Yeah.
It'll just allow me actually to like calm down and sit for 10 minutes and listen.
Yeah.
Um, and that's also just, yeah, super valuable, even if I don't even use the recording.
It can be so rare to like just have something to kind of sit in the moment, be in the moment, listen, slow down. Yeah.
For sure.
So writing for a really epic piece like this, like Fire Ecologies, you're doing a lot of writing for electronics and or computer, whatever we want to call it, fixed media, whatever. But there is a lot of live processing. So there's that component of it, and then there's an instrumental component. So how do you approach that whole process? Do you not see it as two separate things? Is it all one thing? How do you approach the process of dealing with sort of having live instruments, quote unquote live, versus electronic parts?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think when I start, I think of it as one thing.
Yeah.
Obviously at some point the instruments have to do something which is different than what the playback or electronics or
It's interesting.
processing is doing.
Yeah.
But and usually that has to do with like flexibility. Like a
Yeah.
player has to have some flexibility, and the technology sometimes can be inflexible, and figuring out a way to make that inflexibility feel um, organic or important
Right.
to the aesthetic or process. Um, yeah. So when I started this piece, actually,
Yeah.
I usually get samples from players now. That's been a big thing. And so I
Yeah.
asked the cellist and the violinist to send me some
Yeah.
samples of them playing different kind of like harmonic trills and sort
Hmm.
of stuff that was sort of improvisatory, but had a certain sound quality I was going for. And then I built most of this piece out like in a DAW before I did
Hmm.
any notating. Actually, the score is like really crude. It's pretty rough. It
Hmm.
almost feels more like just a way of kind of like a lead sheet, like where everybody can sort of keep
Right.
track of what they're doing. Like none of the electronic stuff is notated, and
Right.
um, it will be eventually. I want to actually make a real score so that someone can actually look at it and know what's going on, and when they perform it. But just since I work so closely with the ensemble,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily need that.
Yeah.
But so
That's
yeah, just
really
like
interesting.
taking
Can I just stop there for a second? So
sure.
I feel like there's so much discussion and so much toiling over the score, and the score being like this perfect thing. And here's a piece that has been performed many, many times, has a final, quote unquote, final recording. And you're saying the score is still kind of in flux.
yeah, the score is something that's on my to-do list for
Yeah.
like the end of the year is to like
Well,
actually make the score.
well, I wasn't meaning to give you like anxiety about it. Like, hey
No,
man, where's the
no,
score?
I'm
But
looking forward to it because
yeah,
it's the score isn't the source of anxiety. It's normally the score that's the source of anxiety for me.
right. Yeah,
And now it's like
yeah,
it's going to be fun to make the score because it's
right.
all finished and there's a
It's all
recording
done.
and I don't have to like think about, if it makes any sense to anybody because they
Yeah,
know it. The
they
ensemble
know.
knows it, and there's a recording that someone could refer to if they don't
Yeah.
understand something in the notation. Yeah, so I wrote a piece for the Unheard of Ensemble when they were kind of first starting, and we really liked working together. I really enjoyed writing for them. I enjoy their personalities. I enjoy what they're trying to do, like using a lot of like electronic heavy
Right.
setup and video, and everybody being mic'd and having processing available to
Right.
them and stuff like that. And so we said, okay, let's try to apply for another grant to like write a really long piece.
Yeah.
And so we applied to Chamber of Music America. We got a grant to write an hour long piece. And
Yeah.
then I think that was before the pandemic. Then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And so, in a strange way, it worked out really well because we were able to like go do a lot of field work during the pandemic because everybody was
Sure.
outside and no one was hanging out with each other. And so it was like
Right. Yeah.
actually very productive to just go wander around outside and collect field recordings and audio recordings,
Sure.
video recordings.
Yeah.
And so that was the summer of 2020 when we were, I think, kind of in peak
Yeah.
COVID,
Yeah. It would have been from like
where,
March to September. Yeah. It was pretty
yeah,
much, it was, you were worried about like jogging outside because you could get sick. Just, yeah, you'd have to wear a mask and jog. It was, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
if someone walked too close to you in the park, you're like, what
Right.
are you doing, man? You trying to
Right.
kill me?
Yeah. It turned into this whole thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes I wish we still had that distance, but definitely not the pandemic. But yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
But you
so
had
yeah,
all that
I
time
thought,
to do that recording. Yeah, to do
yeah,
that
and it
recording.
was
Yeah.
a really bad wildfire season, and that was something that I'd already
Mm,
been thinking about when I worked with them on Maple, and that might have
right.
been the impetus to be like, well, let's make this something bigger.
Yeah.
And so I just hopped in my car and drove to California,
Mm,
drove all through the Central Valley, like from Southern California all the way to Portland, Oregon,
mm,
through the middle part of the state, the middle part of Oregon,
mm,
where there was a lot of wildfires happening. And
mm.
it was absolutely crazy and fascinating.
Yeah.
We hear about wildfires, and obviously there
Right.
was a huge one in the city, in LA
Yeah.
last year. And so that was, or
Right.
maybe it was this year. And
Yeah.
that was
There's been
obviously
so
a
many. There's
huge,
been countless, even just in this last kind of cycle of season. Yeah.
yeah. And that one you would see, very visibly if you were
Right.
in LA.
Yeah.
But these other ones are oftentimes in these kind of like small communities, like
Right.
off the grid a little bit, and visiting some of these and just seeing that they're like completely decimated. It looks like
Right.
a bomb was dropped
Bomb
on
dropped.
them,
Yeah.
and sort of trying to document some of that was just really fascinating. So I spent about a month just like collecting,
Mm,
and we were teaching on Zoom. So I taught my classes out of,
sure.
like whatever
Yeah.
weird cheap motels I could find or Airbnbs that
Your
would
students
house
started
somebody.
asking questions. They're like, "What's going on?"
And I would try to get near these fires, active fires, which of
Mhm,
course they're blocked off. And,
mhm.
the People were definitely suspicious of what I was doing up there, and
Sure.
but it was really amazing. And I mean, California that year and almost every year now, it's and the West in general, it's just completely filled with smoke. I mean, even St. Louis now has
Yeah.
a lot of hazy days from fires in Canada and stuff. And
Well, even
so
in the
yeah, that
east,
was
even in the east now, where we have
sure.
just whole days like in New York and Boston, where it's whether it's from Canada or elsewhere, it's just just completely poor air conditions, and actually we can physically see the remnants. So
Definitely. So that's how it kind of started, and then
yeah,
took on this. I mean, I knew it was going to be a really long piece, so I wanted to break
yeah,
it into movements and
right,
just to make it manageable to compose, but also to listen to, so that there's some variety throughout.
sure,
Uh, Looking back at it now, the piece unfolds really slowly,
yeah,
and almost
mhm,
every movement is pretty slow, actually. Even the
right,
ones that are sort of like fast are kind of slow development. And I
right,
think maybe that's also a little bit of a sign of the moment when like
yeah,
life just slowed down a bunch for a lot of people.
right,
Not having work, not being able to go to work, like not being able to really leave your house for the most part.
yeah,
So that is something that's kind of interesting to look back on, is like how,
yeah.
for me, like how slow that it develops.
Well, that's interesting. I feel like Jadou or Water Games or Water Play, I feel like that piece, it's about 7 minutes long, and I felt like it just flew by. Like you know what I mean? Like I feel like it moves very quickly. Um, but then again, I mean, maybe I'm doing a lot of long form listening, so that's sort of the point of that. But yeah, definitely during the pandemic, the idea of sitting down and watching a 3 hour movie sounded like a great thing to do. Where today it might be like, do I really have that time to commit that much to a piece of art, whether it be music or movie? Um, so yeah, it's this slowly developing idea. But one of the things I noticed with the second track, and you can tell us a little bit about that and sort of how it relates to Ravel. I kind of saw it in sort of three parts, and we could talk a little bit more about that. But why don't you tell us a little bit about that second track and how that kind of fits in the context of everything else, as well as sort of an homage to Ravel a little bit, or homage, or yeah,
Sure. So most of the scenes have a reference to a previous piece of classical music, and I started doing this, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, like looking at older pieces that were inspired by nature and kind of like
sure,
using the same inspiration now,
right,
and thinking about like, the technique of Ravel on this, new-ish piano with a pedal with all this
right,
resonance and all this sort of stuff, being
right,
able to create these kind of like watery sounds,
right.
and thinking about how I might create a kind of like watery sound in 2021 or 2020, whenever I wrote
Yeah,
that movement.
sure.
And I was thinking about like, well, now I'm the opening of this piece actually starts with the sound of water, even though it sounds
Hmm.
like fire.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe I can take this sample of water and sort of like, through a process in Max MSP, slowly kind of like accelerate it and
Yeah,
glitch it until it becomes so fast that
right,
it creates like pitches that sound like harmony.
right,
And the way that it's like glitching so quickly, to me, has this kind of like glistening quality, like a surface of water. And so that was my way of being like, in 2020, I'm going to create the sound of water with like a computer algorithm, whereas Ravel is going to do it with a pedal piano or something.
right. Yeah,
Different technology that kind of creates
sure.
this, still trying to go at this like natural inspiration.
Right.
Um, but that's what I was thinking about with the Ravel. And then obviously the piano part is sort of also very sort of like
Yeah,
fast and Ravel like.
yeah,
And the movement is formally like very neoclassical,
right.
which also I associate with some Ravel as well.
Yeah. And so we have this kind of wonderful opening section where you have sort of a fast moving piano along with the sort of trickling electronic part. There's these really nice kind of like hairpin crescendo, decrescendo sort of figures in the strings, and then of course the clarinet is kind of echoing this sort of trickling. But there's a really interesting part that happens maybe about a third of the way through, where all of a sudden we start to get these real definitive chords. And it's kind of like establishing tonic subdominant type stuff going on. But then it seems to kind of incorporate like every chord in the rainbow. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what was the idea behind having these like kind of big chordal statements that kind of then just then sort of incorporating every harmony? It's kind of like you just introduce us to every other chord that could be possible in that that particular key at the time.
Yeah, so the piece is built kind of almost in a song form kind of way.
Yeah.
The beginning section happens two times, and it has two sections in it. There's
Okay.
a this high clarinet melody, which is very simple,
Mhm.
and then a sort of like paired violin cello melody that is the second half of the kind of like A section,
Mhm.
and that comes back way later, actually in the very last scene of the piece.
Sure.
And I repeat that sort of twice, but the second time I think it's like a little bit compressed. The phrase lengths are maybe only like two
Sure.
bars versus 4 bars or something.
Like it might
And
be
then
in a
this
verse and second verse type of a song type.
exactly,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then um, the part you're talking about, I actually was thinking about it as like a bridge. I
Yeah.
was like, this can just be something else. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be related to the A section. It's the beauty of the B section. The beauty of a bridge is it
Right.
just has to go
Right.
somewhere else.
Sure.
And then I was just thinking, okay, I've gone somewhere else. I mean, I have a heavy metal background, so I was like, I want this thing to be sort of driving.
Yeah.
I love the sound of like staccato
Yeah.
um, strings, piano, clarinet. Actually, all those instruments, I love their staccato quality,
Right.
and just kind of creating this sort of little hocketing effect between them and a sort of
Yeah.
minimal, I don't know, almost
Yeah.
the chord progression to me almost has like a Philip Glass quality,
Yeah.
using some medians and things at first, and then the last part where I start to introduce more chords through this progression that slowly grows, a very
Yeah.
traditional kind of classical progression that grows,
Right.
was just me trying to get back to the tonic at the,
Back
the
there.
start of the
So
piece.
we're always right. We're always trying to pivot. Right. We're always trying to pivot.
So I was like, I got
Uh,
to get back there. So I like
yeah.
going to reverse engineer it,
Right.
so that I can get back to the beginning. I don't have a strong opinion about whether music should be political or apolitical, or have a, I don't think about that. Um, as far as being an activist, when it comes to being a composer, I also don't think about that. Um, I think about what makes me feel, and uh, climate change makes me feel things because where I grew up is
Mhm.
like a very beautiful, naturally preserved place.
Yeah.
And then climate change is gradually destroying that.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel things. And so I want to respond to that. I follow feelings mostly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things show up in my work, typically current events and things like that.
Mhm.
Or am responding to them because maybe something makes me sad or makes me happy or whatever that I
Sure.
read in the news. And
Right.
almost all my work has some part of it that's related to that. It's just not explicit. I don't say that.
Sure.
But in this piece, obviously, I'm explicitly talking about this thing.
Mhm.
And that's maybe because there's like actual field recordings and things in it, so it maybe calls it up more clearly than it would. But I think if there weren't field recordings, even though there are, I think if this piece didn't have a title, I don't think you would think of forest fires or climate change or any of that. I'm not sure it would be like that present, but it's just a starting point for me of like what makes me feel something, and then I want to like express that or figure out a way to express that. But
you also mentioned too, like drawing from previous, things in the repertoire, previous composers, previous repertoire. You're kind of drawing that in as well. So sometimes those can be almost seen as causes too, right? Where you're like, the legacy of somebody else's, catalog.
For sure. I'm not sure why I'm so interested in riffing on like old, like canonical repertoire. I think I like, people like Patrycja Kopeczinskaya, violinist. I like that she's like pretty irreverent with the repertoire sometimes in her decisions. I mean, it's very educated. I don't want to say irreverent in a in a way that she's like, not educated or something about it. Like she's incredibly educated about it, and she's happy to be. She treats it as malleable, and I feel that same way with this stuff. Is like, we are the people who made this a canon, and now we're trying to maybe reconsider that, but we have the ability to think about it any way we want to. But I also love classical music. I love tons of music. This piece has actually tons of references to different kinds of music in it. Stylistically, it's like kind of all over the place. So I think that's also part of just like, I don't know, loving music and like letting that interest and love of music into my music and not feeling like I have to reject it in the form of like me having my own personal artistic vision or something that is completely separate and individual from a history or a tradition or just kind of repertoire.
Well, Chris, this has been fantastic. It's been great hearing about Fire Ecologies. Of course, it's coming out, or it's already out on New Focus. It involves heavily your collaborators, Unheard of Ensemble. Before I let you go, let us know where we can find out more about you, of course, and then where we can go to pick up the new album and just learn more about you and your music.
I think the best place to go right now is I have two albums that are this one that came out this year on Bandcamp, and then one that came out last year that's kind of similarly themed. That's also on Bandcamp if you just search my name on Bandcamp. And I have a website, but do people use websites anymore? Do people look at websites?
Some people do.
I'm on Instagram. Go to Instagram. Or Spotify. You can hear my music on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you use to stream music, YouTube or something. But I think, just reach out to me too, and I can just send you music as well if you want more. I put all my music and scores basically on my website if people want to look at them, but happy to send stuff to people as well.
Thanks to Chris for sharing his time and music with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out other episodes in the series. And as always, like, subscribe, or leave a comment on your preferred podcasting app. I'm Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, and this has been The Process.